Imagine this. You wake up in a world that feels completely foreign to you. You're living in 2024, an age of high technology and advanced medicine, where we have access to the best treatments, the internet, and the ability to fight off almost any illness. Everything around you, devices, technologies, hospitals, the ease of modern life seems like a given. But what if suddenly you find yourself not in your time? What if you wake up in the 14th century, in the midst of one of the darkest and deadliest periods in human history, a time when a mysterious plague is sweeping across the land and death is everywhere? What happens when a person from the future, someone who understands disease and science, is trapped in the past? What do you do when you know that illness can be stopped? That it isn't a punishment from above, but a result of bacteria and germs, but no one believes you? This is the story of someone who finds themselves in the middle of the Black Death, trying to survive, to understand, and maybe even help the people around them. But can knowledge alone change the course of history? Our hero wakes up in a strange, incomprehensible city. It is ancient, with narrow, muddy streets and towering, soot-streaked buildings of stone and timber. The first thing he notices is the smell, a stench unlike anything he's ever experienced. It's a mix of decay, filth, and something more insidious. The people here are gaunt, their clothes rough and alien to him. The language they speak is archaic, and though he recognizes fragments, it's mostly incomprehensible. He realizes quickly that this isn't the world he knows. He's in the 14th century and everything is wrong. The streets are filthy, filled with waste and rotting debris. There's an air of desperation, an unspoken fear in the way people move and avoid each other. Disease is already spreading, though they don't yet understand it. To them, illness is a punishment from the divine, or a curse. Our hero knows the truth. He knows about bacteria, germs, and how they spread. But here in this primitive world, his knowledge is like a riddle no one can solve. Our hero desperately tries to convince the people of this world to follow modern medical practices. You must wash your hands, he pleads with the local healers. But they scoff at him. Disease comes from the heavens, one of them says dismissively. What you speak of is nonsense. He tries to explain how the plague is spreading, how the fleas on rats are the culprits, but his words fall on deaf ears. He feels like he's shouting into the void, his knowledge useless in the face of such overwhelming ignorance. Some begin to suspect him of witchcraft. His strange appearance, his unusual speech, and his foreign ideas mark him as an outsider. And in this time, outsiders are feared. As the plague spreads, the city descends into chaos. Panic grips the streets. Families abandon their sick loved ones, desperate to save themselves. The bodies of the dead pile up, left unburied. The authorities are overwhelmed, and no one knows what to do. The hero witnesses horrifying scenes. Children crying over the bodies of their parents. Entire households wiped out in days. And mobs roaming the streets in search of anyone to blame. The city becomes a ghost town. Its once bustling streets, now empty except for the carts, carrying the dead to mass graves. He tries to help where he can, setting up makeshift quarantines, and urging people to clean their homes and their hands. But his efforts are met with suspicion and resistance. He feels helpless, watching as the disease claims victim after victim. The hero hears tales from the survivors. One man speaks of an entire village that vanished overnight, its inhabitants succumbing to the plague before they could even flee. Another woman describes burying her entire family, one by one, until she was the only one left. But there are darker stories too. The hero learns of towns burning their own homes to try to rid themselves of the disease. He sees people turning on one another, accusing neighbors of being cursed or bringing the plague upon them. It's a world where reason has been replaced by fear. As the death toll rises, the hero's frustration grows. He knows what must be done to stop the plague, but the people of this world are too trapped in their beliefs to listen. His modern knowledge feels like a curse, a painful awareness of what could be but isn't. He becomes consumed by his mission to save as many lives as he can. He works tirelessly, setting up small sanctuaries for the sick and encouraging basic hygiene practices. But in his desperation to help others, he begins to neglect his own safety. Eventually, the inevitable happens. Despite his precautions, the hero contracts the plague. He recognizes the symptoms immediately: the fever, the weakness, the black boils. He knows what's coming, and he knows there's nothing he can do to stop it. His death is a quiet tragedy. The man who came from a future of knowledge and science, who understood the mechanisms of disease better than anyone else in this world, falls victim to the very plague he sought to fight. And so, he was gone, along with millions of others, leaving behind a world that would never be the same. He knew too much, but was unable to protect himself because he was too focused on saving those around him. In the end, his death seems almost inevitable, a part of the same fate that consumed the world, one where knowledge is not always enough to protect us if we fail to recognize our own vulnerability. And in his death, there was a bitter truth sometimes. In our desperation to help others, we forget to help ourselves. And this world was one where no one could escape untouched. It was too vast, too relentless for any one person to survive alone.